Alina, and you're listening to Your PharmD Bestie. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Your PharmD Bestie. So, today's topic is a little bit more personal, but I really did want to have an episode to talk about this. In this episode, I will be discussing my personal journey of taking a gap year quite unexpectedly after pharmacy school and 3 months of residency. So, as many of you know, I was part of a residency program for about 3 months before I had to leave as a result of being unable to fulfill the licensing requirement by the institution's deadline. And there are some caveats to this rule, as I will explain later, because I want you to understand what you are signing up for when you match with a program. First off, nothing happens without a reason. I'm a strong believer that everything happens for a reason. It was definitely very tough to deal with the sudden change in my intended pathway last year, but I learned to turn the time off into an opportunity for my own growth. And now I feel much stronger and more confident heading back into residency. Also, you might hear that the CPJE is usually the exam that trips most people up, leading people to have to leave their residency programs midway. But for me, it was actually the NAPLEX. And I won't use any personal reasons as excuses for having trouble studying for the exam. I just know that once I really had the time to put my head in and focus, I was able to reevaluate my study habits and improve to pass the exam. It was just unfortunate that it took more than one try for me. I did have to reapply for residency, as anyone who has to leave due to licensing does if they want to go back to residency. I decided to reapply only for the same program because I had no doubt in the resource and support that they would be able to provide me to help me reach my career goals. And I'm very grateful to have been reaccepted into the program after having also had the chance to reflect on myself and areas for improvement. So let's just talk about my timeline briefly for this past year, what that looked like. So I found out about my exam results in October, not passing, and basically immediately contacted my program director the day after. I was out of the program within the next day or two, like everything packed from my workspace, all my projects handed off. And I'll be really honest, I was so ashamed of myself at that time that I didn't tell any of my co-residents what had happened except like three people. I just cleaned up my area, left, and figured that people would slowly find out. And yeah, they did. Some people reached out to inquire about me, check on me. Others didn't. I think it was a subject that was very foreign to everyone. They didn't know how to approach me out of concern for me. And I also didn't know how to reach out for support at that time. Until I did break the news, I realized that I still had a lot of people supporting me and wanting me to reapply for the following year. And I was very grateful, and I still am very grateful for that. I focused my attention for the first month after I left just on myself. My original plan was to stay in the area, study to pass the exam within a month or two. So, ideally by December, and then find a per diem position in the area. My mental health declined pretty rapidly, though, shortly after I left the program. And it wasn't quite for the reason of leaving residency, unfortunately, but it did make me realize that the best decision I could have made then was to move out and go back home. So I spent December really just working on myself, coming up with a study plan to tackle the exam. Throughout January and mid February, I spent most of my time studying and singing because that's my hobby, and I wanted to be more involved in my creative hobbies since I now had the time to. I took the exam mid February, passed, and got licensed, and now is faced with the decision of what to do next. And keep in mind that I submitted my residency application, the new one, in December. I heard back about interviews and interviewed late February and was just waiting for match day to hear back, basically. So from the time I got licensed to match day, um, I had some free time to figure out up until start of residency. So I found out that I was reaccepted into residency, which meant I would be moving back to Sacramento in June when residency started. I took an international trip in March and April with my mom to spend time with her. It's currently mid-April as I'm recording this episode. You might be wondering why I didn't choose to work or why I'm not working from now until the start of residency in June. And here's where my personal philosophy comes in. I also had a discussion about this with my pharmacy mentor who checked in quite often to see how I was doing. He had asked me what I was planning to do to fill the time before residency started. And I told him honestly that I didn't think it would make sense to pick up a job. And I think some people might disagree with this, but given my circumstances, I knew I needed to prioritize myself the first couple of months after I left the program. And I wanted to come back stronger. And so I had to prioritize myself and reevaluate what I wanted out of the residency since I was determined to reapply. And my second priority during this time was passing the exam and getting licensed, which I did. The trip was probably not necessary, but since it was already planned ahead of time and already went on it, this is more of a retrospective view. But I think if you are in a similar situation as me, maybe you should take that trip with your family. This is coming from someone who had spent so much of her life hustling, graduating college 3 years, going straight into an accelerated pharmacy school program, and then going straight into residency. And I didn't know it at the time, but the break was needed. And so what's left now is about 2 months until residency starts again. And I don't really feel a rush to have to find a job in the meantime. I would highly encourage that if you are looking for a source of income, if finances are a concern for you, because honestly, that was the most concerning aspect of this whole gap I had. But I did tutor part time and I tried to pick up some gigs here and there. But there should also be no judgment in just putting yourself first and enjoying the break. After getting accepted back into residency, my pharmacy mentor also agreed that besides getting some financial cushion, there wasn't really any additional need to have a per diem pharmacy position until I started residency again. Now, this is just my personal view and how things ended up for me during this period of time, but obviously everyone has a different pathway to take. I just wanted to share mine to tell everyone that it's okay if things don't work out the way you expect it to the first time. The most important thing is to be able to pick yourself up again after you fall. Everything else after will take its rightful place. As I've chosen to share my story, I'm opening up myself to any questions that listeners might have about this. I realized during this whole process that I was not the only one going through this, and I was never alone. And so you should never feel like you are alone in dealing with something that can be challenging, especially having to leave a program or retake a board exam. So, this is a shorter episode. I thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of this podcast. As always, reach out if you have any questions that I can help address in upcoming episodes. And feel free to watch previous episodes for tips and tricks on how to prepare for board exams, residency applications, interviews, and more. Again, I've gone through this process at least 2 times now. So I'm really hoping that my perspective and view on things can really help you get through your journey, whatever that may look like. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave some reviews, and follow us on social media. Until next time.